Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudiriyet nashtaprayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevayam bhagavati uttam shloke bhaktir bhavati nashtike. So continuing with the discussion on Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita by Satsvarup Das Goswami, Volume 4, in every town and village around the world, 1968 to 1971. Chapter 32nd, India, Dancing White Elephants. So Prabhupada is in Bombay and he did this wonderful Pandal preaching program, and his disciples are doing Sankirtan in Bombay 3-4 hours a day and meeting many important people. Mr. Sheksharia held a special program for many important dignitaries of Bombay. Although he had expected no more than 200 persons, many more came. They were Bombay's elite, the women dressed in expensive silk saris and wearing gold and jewels, the men in silk narrow-collared suits or white starched dhotis and kurtas. Prabhupada held kirtan with his disciples, and then he spoke briefly and gravely. "You're all very intelligent persons," he said. "You're all very learned and educated. You're all very great persons. I beg you, I take the straw of the street between my teeth and beg you, just chant Hare Krishna. Please chant Hare Krishna." After his talk, Prabhupada left, and the devotees showed slides of the Hare Krishna movement's activities around the world. They also made their first public life membership appeal, and Mr. G.D. Somani, one of India's leading industrialists, as well as Mr. Sheksharia, signed on as members. Although Prabhupada was happy to see the number of ISKCON's life members increasing, that his shipment of books from Dai Nippon had not yet arrived made him anxious. The devotees were promising life members books, but where were these books? Every day the problem became more and more pronounced. Prabhupada learned of a Calcutta port strike. His books had apparently arrived, but the ship, unable to unload cargo in Calcutta, had left port. He worried that the ship would unload the books in some other Indian port. The exact whereabouts and condition of the books, however, remained unknown. Prabhupada was greatly concerned. He decided to send a competent disciple, Tamal Krishna, to Calcutta to try and retrieve the books. Meanwhile, he would continue preaching, depending on Krishna. Amritsar, October 21st, 1970. Accompanied by a group of disciples, 7 men and 2 women, Prabhupada began a 2-day train ride from Bombay to Amritsar. Years ago, Prabhupada had traveled as a preacher in India alone, riding the trains to Jhansi, Delhi, Kanpur, Calcutta, and Bombay to publish Back to Godhead and solicit support. After only 5 years in the West, he now had the great advantage of sincere disciples, and now the Indians were taking notice. He had stationed Achyutanand Swami, Jayapatak Swami, Hansaduta, and others in Calcutta, Tamal Krishna, Shyam Sundar, and others in Bombay. His disciples would make life members and try to establish permanent ISKCON centers in 2 of India's major cities. His Krishna consciousness movement was beginning in India, and he wanted to travel with his disciples wherever there was an opportunity to preach. Just as he had worked in America, never settling comfortably in one place, but was always traveling, speaking about Krishna, meeting new people, and offering them devotional service, so he would also work in India. The train arrived at Kurukshetra station. "Near here," said Prabhupada, "Lord Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita 5,000 years ago. They say it doesn't exist, a mythological place. It's a symbol of the field of the body and the senses, they say. It's an allegorical place. But here we are at the station as he spoke. The sun was setting and a bright orange sky shone over the flat land. How can they say Kurukshetra is not a real place?" He continued. "Here it is before us, and it has been a historical place for a long, long time." When the train arrived at Amritsar station, members of the Vedanta Sammelan committee received Prabhupada and escorted him and his disciples to park on the outskirts of the city. They showed him the large pandal the Niketan ashram had erected for the Vedanta Sammelan and assigned him and his disciples their quarters, 3 small rooms. Prabhupada took one room, the two women, the second room, and four of the men crowded into the third, leaving three men to sleep outdoors on cots. The first night in the northern climate was cold. Available bedding was meager, and none of the devotees had brought warm clothing. At 4 the next morning, the devotees congregated in Srila Prabhupada's room for Mangalarti and Kirtan before the deities of Radha and Krishna, the same deities who had been traveling with Prabhupada for the past 1.5 years. Despite the austere conditions, the devotees felt fortunate to have such intimate contact with Prabhupada and Radha Krishna. Prabhupada played mridanga, leading the chanting of prayers to the spiritual master. Afterward, he had the pujari distribute to each devotee a bit of the fruit and sweetmeats that had just been offered to the deities. It was still before sunrise, and the room was chilly. As the devotees sat huddled beneath a naked bulb, Prabhupada had them read aloud from Srimad Bhagavatam. That same morning, Prabhupada attended the Vedanta Sammelan. There were thousands of people in the audience, and since most of them did not understand English, Prabhupada spoke in Hindi. His presentation pleased everyone, and the committee members honored him by making him president of the Vedanta Sammelan. Although the program was scheduled only for several hours in the morning and evening, Prabhupada did not limit his preaching to these times. He preached every hour of the day. While he sat in his room, a constant stream of guests came to him, hundreds of pious Hindus seeking his blessings. Recognizing his vestige of Vedic culture, he pointed it out to his disciples. Just see it, he said, how they treat a saintly person. Prabhupada also began receiving the usual flood of invitations to visit the homes of Hindu families. He accepted as many invitations as possible, more than possible, it seemed to his disciples. Prabhupada moved quickly. When the cars were ready, he would come out of his room and go, leaving behind anyone who wasn't ready. After each engagement, he would get into his car and go directly to the next. Latecomers would sometimes find he had already left. They would then jump into bicycle rickshaws and try to catch him. A wrong direction or a missed turn might make them miss the next engagement. And when at last they would catch up, they would find Prabhupada coolly, gravely in the midst of a lecture on Bhagavad Gita, or laughing and taking prasadam with his host. Every day brought at least half a dozen engagements. Come to our temple for darshan, come to our house for prasadam. And whenever Prabhupada would return to his ashram, he would find a long line of guests waiting to spend a few moments with him. None of the devotees could match Prabhupada's pace and enthusiasm. His energy seemed never to wane. For his disciples, being invited insistently to take a full meal at half a dozen homes in one day was too much, especially in Amritsar. They tended to overeat, and some of them got sick, but Prabhupada knew how to handle the situation expertly. He would fully satisfy each host, speak about Krishna consciousness, hold kirtan, take a little prasadam, and move on. One evening, in response to an invitation, Prabhupada visited the home of Baldev Indra Singh, a descendant of one of the ancient Punjab's ruling families. Although nearing 60, Mr. Singh was still a robust Punjabi Kshatriya, handsome, tall, and sporting a big black mustache. He showed Prabhupada and his disciples through his elegant home with its large portraits of ancestors, uniformed Kshatriyas with their helmets and swords. In the trophy room, which had many animal skins and stuffed heads mounted on the wall, Mr. Singh brought Prabhupada and his disciples before his prized trophy, a large tiger's head. Prabhupada approached closely. You have killed this? He asked. Yes, Mr. Singh replied. And he described the details of the hunt. The man-eater had killed many people in a nearby village, Mr. Singh explained. So I went and shot it. Prabhupada's eyes widened and he turned to his disciples. Oh, very nice. Later, Prabhupada sat in a chair and Mr. Singh sat before him on the floor. He said something was troubling him. An astrologer had told him that in a previous lifetime, thousands of years ago, he had fought in the battle of Kurukshetra, but on the side against Krishna. That's not possible, Prabhupada said. Everyone present at the battle of Kurukshetra was liberated. If you had actually been at the battle of Kurukshetra, you would not still be within this material world. Mr. Singh was uncertain whether to feel relieved or disappointed. But Prabhupada assured him, that's all right, don't worry, now you are a devotee of Krishna. See, astrologers and so many people will just give wrong information just to make money or please their customer. But Prabhupada was right on the money. And it is true. Everybody who was in the battle of Kurukshetra, Mahabharat war, they got liberated, whether from Pandava side or Kaurav side. Didn't matter. This is what it says in Bhagavad Gita. When Prabhupada asked Mr. Singh to become a life member of ISKCON, he agreed immediately. He confessed that when he had first invited Prabhupada and his disciples, he had actually been skeptical. But after being with Srila Prabhupada for a few minutes, he said, all his doubts and suspicions had vanished. He would be happy to become ISKCON's first life member in Amritsar. Although the devotees requested Prabhupada to take fewer engagements, he would not slow down. It was his disciples, he said, who were finding the pace difficult. One night after the eighth and final engagement of the day, Prabhupada returned to his room just a little before midnight. For the devotees, the day had been exhausting and they were eager to get to bed as soon as possible. Noticing Prabhupada's light still on, one of them went to his window. Prabhupada was sitting at his desk, leaning back against the wall, listening to a tape recording of one of the talks he had given that day. Always working, always preaching. One afternoon, Prabhupada and his disciples went to see the famous Golden Temple of the Sikhs. A guide took them around and answered Prabhupada's questions. Sikh businessmen, the guide explained, maintained the temple and its expenses. The Sikhs pride themselves in the assertion that no one in Amritsar goes hungry, and they daily feed dal and chapatis to 10,000 people. This interested Prabhupada, and he observed a massive operation. He watched a group of men rolling chapatis, flipping them deftly through the air onto a giant griddle, while other men, using long paddles, turned the chapatis, held them briefly over the hot coals, and then placed them in the stacks. This is how to distribute prashadam, Prabhupada said. So this really, I mean, not just in Amritsar, it's pretty much every Gurdwara, they cook so much of prashadam and distribute. It's amazing. Prabhupada signed the guest book, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Under religion, he wrote Krishnite, and under comments, he wrote, very spiritual. Prabhupada and his disciples visited Ram Tirth Sarovar, the lake where in a bygone age, the great sage Valmiki had his ashram. The terrain surrounding Ram Tirth Sarovar was dry and rocky, and vegetation was sparse. As he stopped at the beautiful bathing ghat at steps leading down into the lake, the devotees were in a jubilant mood, happy to be on a field trip with their transcendental father and teacher. The peaceful lake and the beautiful ghat seemed an ideal setting for being with Prabhupada. The devotees who knew little of Lord Ram listened intently as Prabhupada began to tell some of the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his incarnation of Lord Ramchandra. During the last days of his earthly pastimes, Prabhupada said, Ram banished Sita, his wife, and eternal consort. Pregnant and alone, Sita sought shelter at the ashram of Valmiki, where she soon gave birth to a son, Love. Valmiki created another son for Sita from straw and named him Kush. So, see, they could do all these things. When Sita learned that Ram was sending a challenge horse throughout the world, she instructed her sons to catch the horse. In this way, she concluded they would capture their father and bring him before her. Unfortunately, while the boys were away on their mission, they learned that Lord Ramchandra had departed from the world. Grief-stricken, they returned to Valmiki. To mitigate the boys' anguish of separation, Valmiki sang to them Ramayana, the transcendental narrative of Lord Ram's activities. One day, as Sita was out walking, the ground opened before her and she returned into the earth from which she had appeared. These events, Prabhupada explained, as he stood with his followers by Ram Tirtha Sarovar, had happened no less than 800,000 years ago. For the devotees, it was as if Prabhupada had opened a new door to the spiritual world. The organizers of the Vedanta Sammelan repeatedly asked Prabhupada and his party to play a larger part in the Pandal program. The scheduled discourses were mostly on Mayavad philosophy. God is impersonal, all religious paths are equal and lead to the Supreme One. All is one, we are all God. Such dry speculations could not hold the public's attention, and the Sammelan organizers daily requested the devotees to hold kirtan in the pandal. But with so much other preaching, Prabhupada preferred holding programs of his own in private homes around the city. A devotee asked Prabhupada about a Mayavad slogan he saw posted, Tat Tvam Asi, with the English translation underneath, you are that too. This was a favorite saying of the imposters. Imagine that the living entity is God. Prabhupada said, he explained elaborately the distinction between God and the living entity and told how God, when he appears, displays certain unmistakable characteristics that identify him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These yogis will just talk and talk Vedanta. Prabhupada said, it is simply mental speculation, and they never come to any conclusion. They will go on speculating for years and lifetimes, but we will realize God simply by eating. And from the plate of prasadam before him, he took a sweet and popped it into his mouth. So yes, taking prasadam is also bhakti. It's also devotional service. So by performing devotional service, one can realize God. In the midst of his activities in Amritsar, Prabhupada continued to think of his spiritual children in various places throughout the world, and he regularly wrote them. To the devotees in Calcutta, he wrote, I am very much anxious to hear what you are doing there and if we have made any life members by this time. He asked them to register ISKCON with the government and try to establish a permanent center there. To his disciples in Bombay, he wrote, I am very anxious to know your situation, whether you have removed to the Ram temple or where you are stationed now. To Karandhar in Los Angeles, he wrote, I hope everything is going on well with you in our Los Angeles World Headquarters. Please send me a report of your general activities and also your governing body commission activities. Please offer my blessings to all the members of our temple. How is the deity worship being carried on? Replying to Pendra in the Fiji Islands. Regarding worship of demigod, the whole Hindu society is absorbed in this business. So unless our preaching work is very vigorous, it is very difficult to stop them. And to Bhavanand in New York, please conduct the Sankirtan program regularly and that will give me great pleasure. Regarding our new temple in Brooklyn, Krishna has given you very good chance to serve. So just by writing letters, which obviously devotees would receive after many, many days, especially going to America, the letter would take a long time. He was managing the whole society by regular letters. Not email, not phone calls, not WhatsApp messages, just letters. Very amazing. October 30th, 1970. After 10 days in Amritsar, Prabhupada was on a train heading back to Bombay. He rode in a small first-class compartment with Guru Das, while the rest of his disciples rode in another part of the train. Prabhupada's car being close to the locomotive caught soot from the engine's smoke stack until he was soon flecked from head to foot with small black particles. Yamuna. We were traveling between Amritsar and Delhi and decided to go see how Prabhupada was doing, if there was anything he wanted, because sometimes when the train stopped, he would ask for a devotee to purchase fresh fruit and other things from the vendors on the train platform. So Kaushalya and I made our way through several cars to Prabhupada's first-class apartment. He was lying back on several pillows, with one knee up, looking like a monarch. He had a beautiful smile on his face. We paid our obeisances, and Srila Prabhupada looked at us with a twinkle in his eye. Is there anything hot to eat? He asked. What do you mean? I said. Do you want me to get your lunch, Srila Prabhupada? No, he said, not that. Some rice, some hot rice. I said, what do you mean, Srila Prabhupada, from the train? He said, no, if you can make me some hot rice. I said, I would. So making hot rice in the train at that time, 1970s, oh, that would be difficult. I had no idea how I was going to prepare hot rice for Srila Prabhupada, but Kaushalya and I found our way to the kitchen. Nobody was there, and only two men dressed in black turmeric-stained shorts standing over the coal stove, smoking cigarettes. I didn't know how to speak Hindi, but I said the best I could. My Guru Maharaj wants chawal, some hot rice. The men laughed at us as if we were crazy, and so I thought we had better find someone who would give us permission. But when we found the manager of the restaurant, he said, "No, impossible. You can't cook in the kitchen." I said, "I'm sorry. This is for my Guru Maharaj. There is no question of choice. I have said to him that I will fix rice and I have to fulfill this." But again, he said, "No, it is impossible." I went and found the conductor of the train and explained the situation to him. "If I can't do this for my spiritual master," I said, "then I might as well jump off the train." The conductor took us very seriously and said, of course, you can fix whatever you like in the kitchen." So he brought us back to the kitchen and told the head of the kitchen, as well as the head of the restaurant, that he was giving us permission. The coal stove was gigantic and I was completely unfamiliar with it. All sorts of aluminum pots and dishes were hanging around the kitchen. We cleaned out one of the pots as best as we could, boiled the water and put in the chawal. We prepared a gigantic platter of very hot rice with butter, fresh lemon, salt and pepper and carried it through the train to Prabhupada's compartment. "Here is your rice, Srila Prabhupada," I said as we entered, and his eyes lit up and opened wide. He gave a huge grin. "Oh, my goddess of fortune have come," he said. "They have brought me my rice. Thank you very much. This is just what I wanted." He ate so much from his huge plate. He took a little kachori and puri with it, and a little pickle. He was very pleased. That night, the train pulled into the New Delhi station. With its scurrying crowds of passengers, hawking vendors, refreshment counters, news stands, beggars, and coolies in their dingy red jackets. The stopover would be 20 minutes. Suddenly, a man appeared in Prabhupada's compartment, identifying himself as D.D. Gupta. Although Prabhupada had not met him before, they had corresponded. He was a Delhi man, not especially influential or wealthy, but he wanted to help. Offering Prabhupada a box of sweets, he invited him to stay in Delhi. Prabhupada, however, already had other plans and had even wired ahead to notify the devotees in Bombay of his arrival. Prabhupada looked over at Guru Das, who was feeling happy and especially blessed to have this intimate contact with his spiritual master. 12 hours they had spent in the same compartment, eating together, talking together. Just minutes before, Prabhupada had been stressing the importance of farming and explaining how the scarcity of food was due to mismanagement, not to lack of rain or arable land. Gurudas was happy and he was looking forward to the next leg of journey with Prabhupada, anticipating the scenery and his return to Bombay. "This man is inviting us," Prabhupada said. "Get down and see what you can do." Get down? There was hardly time to ask questions or discuss what to do in Delhi. The train would be leaving immediately. Gurudas said he would stay, but he would need help. He and Prabhupada agreed on a team: Yamuna, Gurudas's wife, Giraj, Durlabh, Bruce, and Gopal. Gurudas ran to tell his wife and brahmacharis the news. The devotees had little trouble picking up their light bags and getting off the train, but they felt sad to be leaving Srila Prabhupada. As the train pulled away, they offered obeisances outside Prabhupada's window and waved to him, praying for his mercy. This was an austerity, perhaps a tiny drop of what Prabhupada had gone through when he had first arrived in America. Can you believe? Prabhupada just, no plans, no nothing. He just asked this team to get down and start preaching in Delhi. And they are the ones, first they came to Chippiwada temple, and then they established whatever they could, the movement in Delhi. Then they invited Prabhupada for a Pandal program in Delhi. I believe that was in Connaught Place, somewhere in Connaught Place. And first Prabhupada established Radha Parsarthi in Bengali market, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, Bengali market, somewhere in Bengali market. So this is how, I mean, if I don't know, here it will be explained the austerities the devotees went through in Delhi. or some other places, they went through lots of austerities. But austerities, actually what it means is our purification. We think we are suffering, but we are not suffering. We are getting purified. All our, so much of previous karmas are gone, taken care of. And Krishna's mercy is, he is bestowing his mercy on us. Guru Prabhupada is bestowing his mercy on the devotees for doing austerities to serve Krishna, to serve the mission. So it's very important, very, very important. And the austerities at the same time, we have to understand what's the backbone of bhakti. It's not austerity, it's humility. Austerities we have to do, our sadhana we have to do, services, whatever we can do, in a humble state of mind, being very humble, understanding that it's the mercy of Prabhupada, mercy of Krishna, that I'm getting this service. Not that I'm capable of, not that I'm very, very much qualified, not that it's my right, whatever. No. Somehow I got this service, or what a service, whether in yatra, whether in the temple, whether wherever, but perform it in a humble state of mind. Then we make tremendous progress. Okay, I guess we can stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments?
Nice class, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Please accept my humble wishes. Prabhuji, with humility, we also need lot of patience.
Yeah, well, humility is there, yes, patience will be there.
Because Srila Prabhupada waited, he adjusted everything, and because he has so much, faith, and he just tolerated everything. He was so humble, actually. That's why people were just accepting his order as is, right? आज के डेट में प्रभु जी इतना we are so मतलब our mind is so flickering कि somebody says one thing and somebody do one thing, we feel like अरे नहीं ये सही नहीं है, वो गलत है, ये है ऐसा. But having firm faith means those people were also great, that once they had a faith on Prabhupada, they didn't divert it. पता नहीं. For us, it's like still going on.
This all will happen when our chanting is proper.
Oh yes, Prabhuji, yes.
Cheto Darpan Marjanam will happen when chanting is proper.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, Archana Mata, you saying something?
I was saying Amritsar का खाना याद दिला दिया प्रभुजी.
क्या चीज?
अमृतसर का खाना याद दिला दिया प्रभुपाद की Excellent food. Amritsar is famous for this thing. Anyway, thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Okay, thank you, Mata. You all have safe and wonderful.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.